Hi everyone, welcome to Power and Freedom. I'm Alana Hunt, founder of Power and Freedom and powerandfreedom.com. Thank you so much for joining today. It's a funny old sort of day here. The wind is whipping around the place. I don't think we have any sort of hurricanes, but it's kind of a warm, strange sort of a day. So there's weird energy going around, but it's all good. I want to thank you for joining today. And today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I'm actually calling this the TripWire Warning System. So when I call it the TripWire Warning System, if you like, what do I mean? So if you've ever had those moments where you feel triggered, you know, when you go into a situation and you see somebody or you're in a situation and you find that something happens inside you, that's a trigger. So I want to talk about what that actually is, you know, and actually what can happen when we feel triggered. It's a common expression. We talk about it a lot of the time, but a trigger, actually, I call it the tripwire warning system because actually it's a message from your unconscious mind. It's a message from your subconscious mind, if you like, but it's really that deepest part of you where everything's happening on automatic pilot. And it's a message for you. It's a chance for you to have a look at what's happening under the surface. And really where the sort of conversations that we've been having lately are going is that, you know, my message is obviously power and freedom, and I've been talking about power and freedom for a long time, but it's about your ability to create the life you truly want. It's about your ability to maybe use the law of attraction. If you're into the law of attraction, it's something that, you know, I use and that I teach. So the law of attraction, if you've watched The Secret or you've heard about this, it's been around for quite a while. It's been talked about a lot. And it's a really important concept. It reminds us that we have the ability to create what it is we want to see in our reality, and that it's how we show up in the world, the way that we are, our behaviors, our thoughts, our emotions, all of those things are creating our reality all of the time. So the tripwire warning system is like this amazing gift, because 95%, at least 95, they say between 95 and 99% of our lives are being driven by our subconscious mind. So that's stuff you're not aware of. It's kind of playing on replay. It's on automatic pilot, and it's delivering the results that you see outside of yourself. It's delivering your reality. And so anything that gives us a hint of what's happening below the surface at a level that we're not maybe able to access or be so aware of is a huge, huge gift. So the tripwire warning system is like this massive gift from your unconscious mind. Now, it can feel really scary. It can create these awful feelings in your body. It can, I mean, I'll go through some of the things that can happen when we feel triggered, or there's some of the things that you might recognize in your body, because generally it shows up in your body. It will be in your mind, it's in your emotions, but you'll really feel it in your body. So here's a few things that might happen that might let you know that you're being triggered, because, you know, you could get this tripwire warning system, but if you're unaware of what it looks like and what the warning is and what it would look like, then you're going to miss it. And it's a powerful, powerful gift, and it can make a massive difference to how your life goes and how it unfolds and what it is that you see outside of yourself in your reality. So what are some of the things that we could feel in our body or feel in our emotions that let us know that there's a trigger? So you might feel anxiety. So anybody who's had anxiety, you probably know what that feels like. But I'm just going to go through. You might feel your heart rate go up. You might feel a bit hot and cold. You could feel flushed. Your breathing might speed up. You might feel like you're being squeezed. You know, there could be just this feeling of tension, and you may feel very afraid, or you just might feel something feels wrong. You're jittery inside, or you might get a headache, or, you know, maybe your blood pressure will go up. But that sense of anxiety, where you're just not really quite sure where to put yourself. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, and if you've experienced anxiety, you're going to recognize it. That's one of the things you may feel when something's triggering. I'm going to talk about triggers a bit more in a moment, but I'm just going to go through these symptoms so that you can, if you're not aware of them, that you can begin to see and recognize if when this is happening in my body, something's going on, something's being triggered that's not about today. And that's the thing with triggers. It's not about today. It feels like it's about today because you can feel it in your body, right? You can hear it in your head. You can hear these thoughts. You can feel these emotions. It feels like it's about today, but it's not. And when you can begin to recognize that something's a trigger from the past and not about today, you can step away from it, and you can use the TripWire warning system that really that's what a trigger is, to have a look at what's actually going on. So anxiety is one of them. Another one, you might feel anger. You might feel really irritable. So anger comes in lots of forms. You know, there's things like frustration, but in this case with a trigger, it could be irritation. It could be indignation. You know, if somebody says something and you feel triggered and you get that kind of instant response, it's probably not about what they've said today. It's probably about some other occasion where somebody criticized you, or perhaps there was a pattern of criticism in your childhood where no matter what you did, it was never good enough. You were always told it wasn't good enough, and you were always criticized. And so when you feel criticism, or you hear something, that your brain connects the dots between what's happening today and what has happened in the past, you can feel this irritation or this indignation, and it rises up, and it's a strong feeling. Kimberly's just saying, yes, it boils up in the middle, then I choose to allow it or not. Exactly. And this is what we're talking about. Understanding the trigger 99% of the time is not about today. And you get to decide if you can step away from what's happening in your body and what you're feeling and the emotions and the physical things that are going on in your body. You actually have the opportunity to see what's going on, to have a look at it. But in that moment, just to say, hold on a second. This is not about today. I get to choose how I respond to this. Judy's saying you can feel like you're dying. I went to the ER years ago for it. You absolutely can. I mean, anxiety can mimic a heart attack. It absolutely can. You can feel like you're dying. You can't catch your breath. Your heart rate's going. Every part of you, you just feel completely weird. Like everything shuts down. It can, you know, severe anxiety can absolutely mimic a severe response that actually does require medical assistance. I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. Vanessa's saying it's really not nice at all. No, it's not, Vanessa. And I've struggled with anxiety in my life. Just at the moment, it seems to be reasonably under control. So maybe I'm doing some of the right things that I should be doing for myself. You know, we don't always do the things that we need to do. And I'm beginning more and more and more to recognize these triggers and actually understand that they're not about today, and that although there's something happening in my body, I can breathe. You know, there's techniques that I can use to manage my anxiety. But the triggers, those triggers, it's like instant. And I use, you know, we talk about a trigger and I talk about the tripwire. Basically, it's like a bomb's going off. It's literally, if it gets to the point where you get right into it and you're not able to manage that anxiety, it really does feel like there's a bomb going off in your body, and there's a bomb going off in your life. Kimberly's saying, I'm glad I have a pretty good bullshit meter. That's useful. That's really useful. So, you know, you may feel anxiety, you may feel indignation or irritation or anger. You may feel like you need to shut down. Sometimes it's almost like it triggers like an off switch. And the you that is the true you just kind of disappears, and it's like there's a robot left in its place. Yeah. That's quite a common one. It's like an off switch. Suddenly you're disengaged. You're not in the moment. You've escaped somewhere in your mind. It's called dissociation, is one way of saying it, where you literally, more or less, you leave your body, or your awareness leaves your body. So there's a massive shutdown. It's like, I can't deal with this, instant shut off. And the thing is, it's not, most of the time, it's not about today. So suddenly you're in this situation and you're just having a conversation with someone. All of a sudden you're gone, shut down. And it's really hard to find your way back, because usually that trigger is the reason that you shut down is because that's the way that you've had to do things in the past, where situations, maybe you have felt in real danger, perhaps you have been in physical danger, or mentally or emotionally, there are consequences that are dangerous, that could be life-threatening, or at least feel life-threatening. And in a situation where you can't manage, and particularly as children, there's things we can't cope with as children, and we learn ways to survive. Some of those things are the automatic, there's triggers that happen today that create us, turn us right back into that moment. And shutdown is one of those things. And you disappear, and it's actually really quite hard to find your way back. Suddenly, you know, you've just completely dissociated or shut down in the middle of a conversation, and the person in front of you doesn't know what the hell just happened. I'm just having a conversation. It's not about them, not about the conversation. Just something reminded you. It can be an echo. It's normally an echo, not even about today. You might want to run away. I don't know about you. I've actually physically got up and left a situation that felt really threatening. Not so much these days, but certainly in days gone past, where I have felt squeezed, I have felt triggered. It's as if I've gone back to a situation from my childhood that was super scary and that I couldn't deal with. And I have literally stood up and walked out of someone's house because I simply couldn't handle the situation I was in. Yes, it wasn't a comfortable situation, but my response was completely out of proportion to the environment that I was in that moment. And it lets me know that, you know, something else is going on. At that particular time, I didn't understand this stuff. I really thought it was about what they were doing, what they were saying, how they were treating me. That's how I saw it. In hindsight, it wasn't that. It was something that reminded me of something else. And my brain put them together as if they were the same thing, because that's what your brain does. It's out there searching for what it knows. It's delivering what it knows to you and what is comfortable. It wants you to be safe. It wants you to be comfortable. Unfortunately, some of the things that your brain recognizes as familiar are really not comfortable, you know? or they trigger situations that are really uncomfortable. We might want to hurt somebody. Sometimes there's that feeling you just want to punch somebody. It's just like, I have to do something. I have to get rid of this energy that's suddenly pent up in my body, and the agitation or the panic or the anxiety can feel like you need to attack the person. You can feel so afraid and so in danger that you actually feel like you physically need to defend yourself. It's not that you want to hurt somebody, but there's this kind of physical defense that comes up. And again, it depends. Really, this is about what's happened in the past and the way that you've managed situations in the past. A trigger is literally bringing the past into now, excuse me, however it was that you responded or reacted, or what it was that you needed to do to survive or to cope in that situation. It's bringing it back up to today. The thing with triggers, though, sometimes all the meditation in the world doesn't help. It'll help in terms of managing your anxiety on a day-to-day basis. But sometimes when you're triggered, that anxiety can still come and hit you square in the face. And also the other thing, depending on your background, the other way that the trigger might show up for you is this, not so much a dissociation in the sense that you shut down or kind of, you know, there's a shutdown switch, but you may go into submissive mode. You may still be there, you may still be present, but you might do this. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because if the only way to manage the risk or perceived risk in a situation that you've been in previously, particularly if you've been in abusive or unpredictable environments or violent environments, maybe the only way to survive, the only way to stop the consequences that feel like they're being rained down on your head, or in fact are being rained down on your head, is I'm really sorry, and go into submissive mode. So there's a number of responses. These, how many have I given you? 3 or 4, 5, 6 responses that are possible. And the reason I'm talking about this is that if you can recognize what the trigger or the trigger response is for you. So the TripWire warning, that is the thing. It's the response, it's the anxiety, it's the agitation, it's the indignation, it's the anger, it's the shutdown, it's the I'm really sorry, you know, it's the physical defense that instantly floods your body. And it's as if I don't do this right now, I'm going to die. You know, it's that. And when you recognize what that looks like for you, you can understand that it's a warning system. But it's not just a warning system, as I was saying at the beginning of this, and it's actually access to your unconscious mind. And that's where it's a gift. That's where it's a key that you can use, which is why I'm talking about it today. You know, when we recognize those triggers or how we feel when we're triggered, because a lot of the time what happens, it's a situation we can't figure out what it relates to in that moment. You know, we don't go, because we're flooded with adrenaline or there's this automatic response, we can't even think. It's so automatic, so driven by something we're completely unaware of, that we're just in that moment of reacting. That's all we can do. But if we're able to manage our responses and then actually go, now what just happened here? That's the gift. This is the key, because everything I'm talking about and all the tools that I'm working to give you are about how can we bring awareness to what's happening below the surface, not what's happening that we're aware of, but what's happening that we're unaware of. And as we can bring that unconscious stuff into our awareness, we can look at it. And it's like peeling the layers of an onion, those little moments where we get a glimpse of what's happening in our subconscious or in our unconscious mind. We can bring today's conscious mind, that's an adult mind that has balance, we can bring it to that situation and we can go, oh, okay. And we can start to see the connections between the old stuff that's being triggered and our responses today. Because when we change our responses, when we become aware of the trigger or how we feel in our body when we're triggered, we can ask ourselves a whole bunch of questions. We can go, what is happening here? What just happened? You might not have memories of things from the past. Sometimes that we're triggered and that we don't have the memories that go with those experiences that have perhaps happened in the past and cause us to react the way that we do today. But we can start to see how our responses are impacting on our reality, because that response is probably triggering thoughts that might go something like, that person's really mean to me. How dare they treat me like that? Oh my God, I'm in danger. This is a person that's not safe. So those thoughts will come along with the physical response. And those thoughts are probably about the past. Sometimes they're about today. But what's difficult with triggering is that we don't know whether that warning's about the person who's in front of us today or whether it's just a trigger from the past. So we have to take the time to begin to ask some of those questions. I have to be honest, over 90% of the time, they're not about today. And so we reject people. We reject opportunities. We run away from things that could be amazing and brilliant and awesome in our lives because we've got a warning system and we think it's about today. And so some of those opportunities that we want, that we've said we want, that we've said to the universe, you know, law of attraction, hey, I want this. It shows up, but it triggers something. And so we reject it. So these are some of the things that you can become aware of. Sometimes we stand in our own way. Sometimes we block our own way, not deliberately, but the unconscious conditioning that's going on, that's actually driving our responses. It's driving our thoughts, our emotions, and our choices. And those things are then showing up in our reality. Can extreme fear and negativity be a warning system? Kafula is saying it can be. It can be, but you have to bring your, as I was just saying, you have to bring your adult judgment to that. Because that trigger, that severe anxiety or negativity that you feel in your body, what the measure is this in proportion to what's happening right now? That's the key question. It's about balance. So I'm feeling this severe response. I'm feeling this massive anxiety or this massive negativity, or I'm really afraid, or I feel like I want to run away. What's happening right here and now that means I'm feeling that way? Because if there's nothing in the situation here in front of you, then yes, it's a warning system, but it's really about a trigger. It might remind you of this person that you're speaking to, might remind you of somebody in your past. There may be a similar feeling around you. Sometimes that's something to pay attention to and to stop. But a lot of the time it's not that. A lot of the time it's old stuff that's coming up today and we're allowing it to stop us moving forward. We are blocking our abundance. So you have to bring your wisdom. You have to bring these questions. Is this about today? Gosh, I'm feeling really triggered here, massively triggered. And actually all that's going on is somebody just made a comment. This is not about today. I'm okay here right now. I'm safe. I can carry on. But I'm going to ask myself some questions in a moment when I leave this situation, or I'm going to make a mental note, because I can use this. This is a key. It's like a doorway to my subconscious mind, my unconscious mind. And it's allowing me to have a glimpse of actually what's going on below the surface that is creating my reality. And when I know what those things are, I can shift them. I can address them. I can have a look at them. I can put them into balance. I can take away the charge, the emotional charge that's here, and put it back to neutral. So it's not going to impact. It's not going to block me. It's not going to stop me in my life. Emma Kate's just saying, yes, what just happened? A good way to slow down and see what's beneath there. Absolutely. I usually feel like the person doesn't align with what's going on for me, and that does make me angry. And she's saying, although logically I know that they cannot understand what my triggers are, it taps into the high expectations I have of myself and others. That's a really interesting point, Emma Kate, because you know those expectations, how do I phrase this? It's a really interesting, it's actually a big topic, so maybe we have to talk about this one another time. But those expectations that we form, it's quite complex. Some of what happens with those expectations is people have treated us a certain way in the past, and therefore we set the bar really high. There are things and ways that people have treated us that we're like, I will not tolerate that in my life, which is fair and which is reasonable. But when you're triggered, that feeling of I will not tolerate this can be like on steroids. It's like this massive feeling, this expectation, and we see that we're being treated badly when actually we're not. That person's just showing up how they show up. Sometimes they're not in alignment with us. Sometimes they are being horrible. But a lot of the time, here's the thing with your subconscious brain. Let's go back to basics really here, is that your subconscious or your unconscious brain is looking for what it recognizes. So if something reminds you of how badly you've been treated in the past and your decision that you will not allow that kind of behavior, because those things, two things can be connected, then the trigger is this person's treating me badly. How dare they? I'm going to walk away. They're not aligned with me. I can't be around this person. When actually the person could be fine. It's just something that's triggered, and it brings up this instant indignation or this no. You've got to be discerning. You've got to decide whether actually it's about that person or whether something reminds you, something about them reminds you, the tone of voice, the word they use, a phrase. It can be simple, tiny things. If you think about memory, so this is probably a way to demonstrate it. You think about memory and you smell something, it instantly pushes you into a memory, yeah? You smell something and you remember a time where you smelt that before. It's the same. That's a trigger. So sometimes the triggers can be good and you can get this happy memory. Sometimes those memories are not so great. So it's happening underneath. It's an unconscious pattern or an unconscious connection in your brain. And so when you talk about expectations that you have for yourself and expectations that you have from other people, often those expectations sit on top of behaviors that we have decided not to tolerate. And in some ways we can be triggered. Those expectations sit there and we actually don't allow people to be themselves. We don't actually allow ourselves to see them. We just react quite strongly. Yes, usually it's a massive overreaction. Yeah, almost always. And that's what a trigger is. And that is it. It's the overreaction. When it's an overreaction, when you can recognize that it's an overreaction, it's a trigger. Something's triggered. It's the TripWire Warning System. Hello, something's going on inside. There's a subconscious or unconscious response that's happening here. Is this about today? Emma Kate saying that's exactly it. And then I shut down and figure that I need to get away from that person. Exactly. And of course you do, because you're triggered. And in that moment, you're feeling like you're going to be put upon, or that if you reduce that expectation or that boundary that you've set for yourself, you're going to be taken advantage of. Somebody's going to hurt you. Somebody's going to do something that's not okay. And the only way in that moment of being triggered that you can manage that is to run away, dissociate, make yourself smaller, get angry, get indignation, anxiety, any of those things that we've talked about that are the trigger responses. Yeah. And so, as you say, it's a massive overreaction. You just want to run away. I wanted to talk about what happens in your body when you are triggered and how you can recognize that. What did I call it again? The TripWire Warning System. So let me just have a look at my notes here. I've pretty much gone through most of those things. We were talking a little bit about old patterns, and certainly we've not really talked about abuse or violence or any of those sorts of things and unpredictable environments, but they have a massive, massive impact. And so whether you've been in an abusive environment or whether you've just been in a difficult environment where perhaps your behavior has been controlled or you haven't been able to be yourself, or, you know, whatever has been your experience, you learn ways of surviving. You learn ways of managing your environment so that you feel safe. And when you're a child, the ways that you manage your environment or the ways that you manage yourself are not adult ways. You don't have the skills as a child. You don't have the balance. You don't have an adult's brain that is able to see both sides of something. You're literally in this black and white thinking. Yeah. It's either, and you think about it with kids, you know, everything's either, oh, it's so amazing, or, oh my God, the world's ending, you know, and you just simply don't have, your brain is not mature. You don't have the skills that you have as an adult at your disposal as a child. And so we learn ways of being. We learn ways of manipulating ourselves or our environment so that we feel okay, so that we can survive, so that we can function in some way. And what happens is we bring those ways of coping into our adult world and we discover that they don't work. We have to learn new ways of being. And what a trigger can do, it shortcuts your adult mind. It takes you straight back to when you were 3 years old and something happened and you had a way of surviving it. Maybe you got angry. Maybe you cried. You know, sometimes if somebody cries, the nastiness stops, the criticism stops, the control stops. Sometimes if you rebel, you might get punished, but in some way you feel empowered. One thing that you can control in your environment, in an environment that's uncontrollable. If you feel constantly criticized, you might shut down. You might dissociate. You can't reach me. You can't criticize me. Your words can't reach me because I'm not here. So it bounces off. So you do things as a child to cope. Joanna's just saying, I have a question. What happens if I see someone being rude to others? That's a big trigger for me and I just can't stand it and I react. Oh, that is a tough one, Joanna. What do you do? I think, again, all you can do is bring wisdom. My personal feeling is to support the person rather than react to the person who's being unkind. Turn my attention to the person who's perhaps being victimized or is being bullied. Turn my attention to them, support them, empower them. Sometimes what I'll do is ask them a question. So if this person's being really cruel or unkind and making an unfair judgment, I might actually, in front of that person, say to the person who's being victimized, how does that feel for you? Because you're actually calling the other person out on their crap. But it's more important, rather than being confrontational and inflaming the situation, because that's usually what happens, you know, if two people get into the fray, it inflames things. So I tend to take more of an approach that is about, I'm going to send my energy to the person who's being harmed here, or who is being bullied and show them that there's somebody here in their corner. Now and again, you have to say something. You know, there are times where you do have to say something. But wherever possible, I will always choose the path of least resistance. I don't want to inflame a situation. And it's very easy to inflame a situation. It's very easy to create an environment where the person who's being hurt or the person who's actually being a bully then turns their attention on you. And you might think that's okay, I'm stronger, I can deal with it. But that's not a good outcome for anybody. So anything that diffuses the environment, in fact, go in, take the person out, say, hey, let's just go for a walk. Let's just go to the kitchen. Shall we make a cup of tea? Encourage that whatever you need to do to remove the fraught energy, to diffuse it, you know, because if somebody's a bully, it's not about the person that they're bullying, and it's not about you. It's about their own stuff. They're hurting, they're angry, they're whatever, and they're taking it out on somebody else. And then confronting them just actually makes them feel worse, makes them feel more hurt. So I would tend to try and do whatever's going to diffuse the situation. Not always easy. Emma Kate saying, I have often been in an unpredictable environment when I was younger, and so do feel that has impacted on the triggers I have now as an adult. It was a way of coping. Doesn't really serve me as an adult, though. Very challenging. It is very, very challenging because those triggers are so strong. They are part of how you operate and show up in the world. And so they're not things that you're aware of. So this is where I'm saying, if we can become aware of when we're triggered, learn to manage our responses. So whether that's through breathing, whether it's from taking a moment, whether it's about reminding yourself that it's not about today, whatever you need to do in that moment to just, and then ask yourself some questions. Get back into your okayness and ask some questions. Is this about today? What's going on here? Because what that warning is saying to you, that tripwire warning is saying, there's something going on here that isn't helping you. There's something in the background that's playing on replay that is creating your reality. And if you want something different, we know if we want something different, we have to do something different. But until you're aware of what you're doing, you can't change it. Yeah, it makes sense. So this is part of hooking into what's going on unconsciously and subconsciously, so that when we can bring our conscious awareness to it, it's like a key, unlock something. It might take a few times to get it, but with awareness, we can recognize it the next time. We can go, oh yeah, I know what that is. I choose not to respond. And you know what? The more I do this with people, the better my relationships are. Because the things that were triggering me, and that, you know, I have my triggers, I have my old stuff that comes up and bites me often, but I'm learning to recognize that it's not about today. And the moment that I want to bite back, or I want to be defensive, or I want to be angry, or I want to run away, or I want to shut down, I'm like, no, I can just stay in this moment. This is not about today. This is okay. And have this conversation that plays in my head that kind of calms everything down. It's really not easy. And particularly, let's say you're a parent and you see one of your children being criticized maybe by your partner. What do you do in that environment? You're going to challenge your partner in front of your kid? Probably not the best thing. So how do you handle those kind of situations? Again, understand that there's a part that we can play, but actually relationships that are not direct with us, when we get involved in them, we create problems in many, many cases, because you know what, we're responsible for our own emotions and our own relationships. We're not responsible for the relationships of other people. And it's really hard when you see somebody being victimized. You want to stop it, you want to step in, you want to be, you know, the protector. But particularly in a parent-child type of relationship, if you're seeing that going on, it's not the place, it's not the time. If you can take that person to one side afterwards and say, you know what was really awful? And here's something you can try. Might be a little bit sneaky, maybe. You could look at it that way. But have you ever tried taping somebody? We've all got our phones with us, yeah? Turn your recorder on. If it's somebody that you feel that you can have a conversation with that might be reasonable, play it back to them. Because you know what? So much of the time we have no awareness of how we're showing up in the world, the tone of voice, the way we speak, the things we say, and how cruel and cutting they can be. It's only when we bring awareness to how we're showing up and how we're treating the people around us that we can actually go, oh my goodness, that is horrendous. I didn't realize. Yeah, there's some people who are just cruel, but most people have no awareness of actually what's going on. And sometimes the recording, just go, you know what? Here's what it sounds like. I'll be really honest here, and I'll use an example from my own life. As a mother who was I was very young and parenting without the awareness that I would bring to it today, but hey, maturity, be a much better grandma in some ways than I was a mother. Not that I was a bad mother, but I had my moments. And I remember watching a video back that had been taken one Christmas. And my son did something, it wasn't anything. And I snapped at him. There was a tone in my voice, and perhaps I hadn't meant it as harshly as it came across. But when I watched that video back and I saw the look on his face, oh, that moment of recognition for how I had spoken to him without awareness and how he reacted and what it did to him, I'll never forget that moment. I can't go back and change it. But in that moment, I recognized that with that tone of voice, with being unthinking, wasn't deliberately trying to be hurtful, you know, but in that moment of unthinkingness, of slight irritation, and perhaps it was a buildup of other things. But in that moment, what happened to him, in his body, in his expression, in his face, everything was just like I had just taken a knife and just stabbed him. So we can hurt people even when we don't mean to. We can show up in a way that's hurtful and cruel when we don't mean to. So sometimes we need that feedback that somebody says, hey, here's the tape of what you just did. Did you realize how you sounded? Anytime somebody comes to you in a reasonable way after the fact and says, hey, take it. Grab it, run with it, go, thank you so much for showing me how I appear, because it's not my intention. You can be the kindest person, but your words can cut. The tone of voice, the expression on the face, some of those things that we're unaware of, and how we come across is really cruel. What if you realize it's a trigger after it's already happened? That's okay. If you realize it's a trigger after it's happened, then take note. Okay, right, what just happened? I was triggered. Go back and apologize if you need to. I'm really sorry I overreacted. Take note. Go, ooh, something just happened there. And you may have reacted in a way that you might not want to next time, but you recognized it. So the next time you recognize it as a trigger. Great. Don't beat yourself up for what you don't know. But when you do become aware, do it differently. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up for not knowing. You know, that's the thing. Some of the stuff is unconscious, which means you're not responsible. And you're responsible in the sense that it's you. But although it makes you sad, don't carry the guilt. Guilt's a life sentence. You give it to yourself. That's one of my quotes. Guilt is a life sentence you give to yourself. Don't do it. I actually had a conversation with someone recently, and he pointed out something that he recognized that I was doing. So that was a real gift to me. And he drew the distinction between agreeing with somebody. You know how some people say things, they have these views and you absolutely don't agree with them and you want to jump in and say, yeah, but, the difference between agreeing and validating someone's point of view that you don't agree with and being agreeable. And it was a really important lesson for me, that actually being agreeable doesn't mean you agree with them. It just means that you're non-confrontational. You don't flare up. You don't have to say things. You let it go because it's their experience. If you don't want to be around it, remove yourself from it. But just, we were talking about accepting others, and this is part of it. Just being more agreeable, not jumping on everything, not the minute we get triggered, feeling like we need to respond in some way, and somebody pushes a button and we want to jump on them, or we want to correct them, or we want to tell them they're wrong, or we want to present the other point of view. And all that happens is that we inflame a situation that really, if we just said nothing, would just pass on by. So actually now, before I scroll on and have a look at those comments, I'm just going to mention something that I've just started. We've been talking for a while. We've had some amazing conversations, and I wanted to invite you to a group that I've just set up. I'll find the link and I'll drop it in here. But if you search on Facebook, it's the Law of Attraction Unplugged. So I've just set it up. And what I want to be able to do in that group is a lot of what we're talking about today and so much more. I want to give you tools. It's about making the unconscious conscious. Because when it becomes conscious, we can shift it. And, we have the power to change our lives. We have the power to create the results that we want to see and create our reality however we want. If we believe in the law of attraction, then we know that we're attracting everything to us. When we can begin to understand how we're showing up in the world, how what we're doing, thinking, feeling, the triggers, all of those things, though, when we can begin to make the unconscious things conscious, we can create consciously. Or we have more power in our lives than we do when everything's running on subconscious and unconscious. 95 to 90% of your life is being run by your unconscious and subconscious brain. The more you can bring into consciousness and shift, change, become aware of, the more you're going to be able to create what it is that you want. You're going to be able to remove those blocks, remove those triggers, heal those parts of yourself that flare up, that, create anxiety, or all of those other things. Emma Kate, yes, because wanting to agree is about the ego wanting to win. Yeah. So yeah, the ego, it's the power struggle, isn't it? It's about coming out on top. It's about, I'm right. My point of view is more valid than theirs. And, I don't like how they are thinking, so I need to set them straight. I need to offer the opposite point of view. And hey, have I done that in my life? Learning not to do that one. Be more agreeable. Group sounds amazing. Thanks, Emma Kate. I really hope that you'll join me. It's, we do this on the page, but I really want to go much more in depth. And I want to create a space where you can be honest, where you can show up, you can ask your questions, you can share what's going on for you, that we can help support each other to grow. Because, I'm on this journey too. I don't have all the answers. I try my best, and I'm learning all the time. And what I'm sharing with you is things that I've learned that I hope will help you. But, we're all in this together. And the thing I love about it is that we can learn from each other. And when you ask a question, I have to think about the answer. And then I go, okay, so what is that? What's actually going on? And it allows me to dig, deep into what happens in me and my experiences and the things that trigger me, because, that way I'm growing and you're growing. And that's what it's all about. We're all in this together. Today is really, as I say, it's about the TripWire Warning System. And when you think about a tripwire, right, it's a little bit of wire. If you see it, you can stop. If you don't see it, what happens? You trip it and an explosion happens. And you know what? The results of an explosion, whether that explosion is anxiety, whether that explosion is shutdown, whether it's you running away, whether it's you getting defensive, whether it's you getting angry, those explosions that happen when we trip that wire, when that trigger is allowed to actually, detonate, if you like, it has consequences. It has consequences we see in our reality. It has consequences that are the results. It impacts our relationships. It impacts our life. It impacts our ability to have the things that we want, to go after the things that we want, to recognize the things that we want when they show up. And Cheryl's just saying, being more mindful and aware, meditation has really helped so much. It really does help. Meditation's a wonderful thing. And if that's your thing, fantastic. I struggle with it. I did it for a while, I must admit. And then I, like usual, I forget, falls out of my head. Obviously, clearly didn't get into enough of a pattern with it. And it's something, but we all have different ways of meditating. There is the more sort of structured, guided meditations, I think, are brilliant, because it keeps you engaged and it keeps you in that moment. Sometimes it's quite hard to just sit and meditate because your brain just disappears and, but whatever you do, some people it's walking in nature. Maybe it's going swimming, maybe it's going to the gym, maybe it's walking the dogs, whatever, there's lots of different ways to be mindful or to use meditation in some form in your life. And all it is, meditation really is about calming yourself. It's about bringing yourself back to equilibrium, to center, to okayness. Everything's okay in my world. And whatever your strategy is for that, whether it's meditation or yoga or walking the dogs or going for a swim, or like me with my little vibrational training machine that I use, that is just the most amazing thing. I got it because I wanted to get fitter and stronger, and I broke my foot just over 2.5 years ago, and I wanted to strengthen my foot in a fairly low impact way, fire all the muscles, but the vibration has this impact of moving my energy. It takes 10 minutes. I get on in the morning, I do my exercises, I'm mindful of what I'm doing, because if I'm not, it's vibrating, I'm going to fall off. So I have to be present in the moment while I'm doing it. But it shifts all of that angst, that anxiety, that stale energy that can build up, as we go through our day and we give ourselves a hard time, or we come across things that are difficult to manage. That's one of the ways that I am mindful, or a tool that I use for my meditation. Whatever your thing is, about bringing yourself back to center, developing and putting some of those things into your life so that you can bring them to the front of your mind when you're triggered. I have a coping strategy, and let's talk about some of those things in the group. Let's have a look at some of those strategies. Let's have a look at some of those things that you can do so that when you're in the moment of being triggered, that you can develop a set of skills that allow you to come back to center faster, without the response, without the explosion happening. That's the topic for today. We've just about been on for an hour. Thank you everybody for being here for such a long time and investing so much time in this today. It's funny how I get started and it kind of goes, and the wonderful thing is with you being here is that it helps, it guides the conversation. And it's so wonderful because it just opens up the topic to a whole new level. So thank you so much. If I'm just sitting here talking to my computer, that's okay too. But it's so lovely that you're here and engaging and driving the conversation. It just makes it so much more valuable for me and for everybody else who's here. So thank you so much for being here. I really enjoy bringing these tools to you, things that, really can help you do this deep dive. But we have also been talking about self-acceptance and a lot of things, and those things are absolutely paramount to how the law of attraction is working for you as well. So if we understand that the law of attraction is all about how we're showing up, how our energy is influencing everything around us, how we think, how we feel, what we say, what we do, how we interact with other people, those are all things that we can learn to do better. And when I say better, it's just about doing it in a way that actually delivers the results that you want to see, delivers the reality that you want to see, and anything you can do to shift stuff inside of yourself, because it's what's happening inside of you that's creating that external result, which is why it's the law of attraction unplugged. Yeah. It's not just about affirmations and visualizations. Those techniques are amazing, but there's this thing that's going, that's stronger. It's like a narrative. It's playing in the background, and that is much, much, much 1,095, 99% more powerful and delivering the reality that you see. So let's have a look at those things, because that's where your power is. You start to shift those, everything changes. So fantastic. Thank you so much again for being here today. It's just been amazing, and I've loved every second of it. I will see you all very soon.